Our next session is on technology, and the moderator is Dr. John Sabanjo.
Good morning again. My name is John Shabanjo. We have a session on technology, and as everybody is aware, is the major issue happening right now. We always talk about GPS and other things going to connected vehicles. So it's a very important aspect of our research, and we have 4 wonderful speakers today who's going to be talking on this technology. The first speaker is Dr. Anuj Pradhan, and he's going to talk about vehicle automation and the driver age, human factors and implications.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Anuj Pradhan. I'm an assistant research scientist at UMTRI. It's great to be here. Very august audience. Some of our rock stars here in the from the research space, and Dr. Porter's act was a very tough one to follow. So, thank you for the great talk. I'm going to talk about a project that's ongoing, actually, and I'd like to mention my collaborators, Dr. Molnar, Dr. Eby, Dr. Ryan, I think she's here, Ray Bingham, and really most of this presentation I cribbed from Lisa, so thank you, Lisa. I don't think I'm going to do as good a job of talking about the research as she does. She's really good. But I'm going to concentrate about half my talk on setting this up, and because it's ongoing, because the research is ongoing, I'm not going to talk too much about results. It's going to be more about methods. But it's really about why we're doing this. So our project, we are examining age-related differences in terms of human factors of automated vehicles, and we're using a driving simulator to do so because we just don't have access to self-driving cars. As background, we've talked about self-driving cars. Now, this slide is old, and you see chitty chitty bang bang on a slide. So, these are fantastic imaginary driving cars. Once upon a time, people have been thinking about this for a while, but it's getting real. I mean, these are stuff that are out there on the road today, from Michigan automakers to the upstarts in Silicon Valley. Everybody's doing driverless cars right now. Interesting, great progress. In fact, while we were in this day 1 of the symposium yesterday, the tech world went crazy. I mean, all the journalists lost their mind because Uber said, well, okay, here are our cars. We're going to put it out in Pittsburgh, and you can come in and drive. So if you looked at the headlines yesterday, which I only did in the evening, everybody's like, oh my goodness, the world's changing. Sure, but not, I'm not sure. This kind of looks scary. Like, I think one of the oatmeal videos had something like this, but with RoboCop attached to the car. So it's kind of scary. And it's interesting. Right now, Uber is going to have safety managers behind the wheel so that they can look after the whole transition issue. They can look at, all the edge cases, the corner cases, and so on. Very cool, the right way to do it, I guess. And there are others doing it. Google, Volvo is doing the big Drive Me test in Gothenburg and in China and in the UK. So there are all these big naturalistic sort of studies going on. Very brave attempts. I think it's really good. So really, a technological progress. It's awesome, but the issue here, like Dr. Porter talked about this morning, really is the human, right? And we know this well. It's what they call the nut behind the wheel problem. And I like this quote. I saw this in Wired, I think, one time, and it's very accurate. 98% of driving, is just follow the dotted line. It's the other 2% that matters. So following the dotted line for today's advanced technology, it's actually, well, I don't want to say easy, but it is. I mean, the technology has advanced so much that people, the sensors, the algorithms, everything can do a lot. 98% of the driving can be done. But it's the other 2%. When we humans, when we drivers have to intervene, that is going to be really important. So this is a corollary, I guess, maybe I made it up, I don't know. But until vehicles are 100% self-driving, 100% of the time, the human factor is going to be critical. It's going to remain critical. And what do I mean by 100%, 100%? So you're all very familiar with the NHTSA automation levels, and then of course there's the SAE levels and there are different levels, but in a nutshell, let's say there are 5 levels. My clunker is level 0, drivers in complete control, I like it, and then you go up until level 4 in red, which is our ultimate automation, where the vehicle is designed to perform all safety critical function and monitoring functions. Really, the vehicle does not need a steering wheel. So until we get to that level, we're going to be on level 1, 2, 3 for a while. There's going to be a long transition. And during this transition period, the nut behind the wheel is going to be really important. So the nut behind the wheel problem, or the human factors problem, there are a lot of issues now that have been recognized. A lot of people are working on this. The transfer of control issue, for example, is now on the top of everybody's mind. Again, in a nutshell, it is, imagine you're in a self-driving car, you're being driven along, and then suddenly the computer realizes that they're in a situation that they don't know what to do. They say, human, you are a better judge of the situation, please take over. Of course, you're a human, you're being driven, you're not going to stand with your hands hovering over there looking at the environment. No, you're going to start texting, dozing off, mind wandering, all of that. And then the car suddenly says, please take over. You grab the wheel, and what? You don't even know where you are. You don't even know what intersection you're at. You don't know what the speed limit is. You lack that situation awareness. And that is a major issue. So this transfer of control now, of course, a lot of people are studying it. We're seeing some very interesting results coming out from various labs about, what are the kinds of takeover times that are required, what can be the countermeasures to mitigate these issues of lack of situation awareness for transfer of control and so on. But there's a lot of work still to be done. There are other issues. I'm not going to go over all of it, but what I'd like to say here for the purposes of this particular talk is these issues are relevant for all drivers, of course, and then forget automation. Just regular drivers, right? We're regular drivers. We have our driver subgroups. We have our different driver characteristics, mainly based on age and experience. So we have teenage drivers who are horrible, and then we have older drivers who have a high crash rate for different reasons. All of these are going to come into play with automated vehicles, especially when you're still going to have driver interaction, even for a fraction of the time, or with other advanced driving technologies in the car. So ACC and lane keeping and blind spot warning, all of these really good, potentially life-saving technologies in the car. How do we react to it? How do different populations react to it? That is our question, and that's the study that we're going to talk about. So the current project, like I said, we're really interested in all these questions about advanced technologies in cars, how they affect different driver populations. Huge question, but what we focused on really is towards the more rightmost end of the spectrum, where we're looking not at level 4 automation, but really at level 3 automation at this point, where it's an accumulation of all these advanced safety technologies in cars. And we want to see how older drivers and younger drivers and, I guess, middle-aged drivers react differently to these cars. What can we learn about age-related differences? So the current project, like I said, advanced technologies hold a lot of promise for vehicle safety, but we don't know all the risks that are out there yet, right? And at least in these early stages, there may be unintended effects of these technology. Many of these, like behavioral adaptation, for example, that we just don't know about. We need to understand this more. And how people react to these risks, again, we don't know much, but these are definitely going to vary, especially by driver age, by driver experience level. I mean, your regular 18-year-old is probably going to react very differently to a technology either breaking or not working as anticipated as compared to your 65-year-old. So for this study, these are the bigger questions, but a more focused question is we want to examine the human factors issues associated specifically with transfer of control in a level 3 automated vehicle to identify what age-related differences we have. Now, we don't have level 3 automated vehicles out there. I called Google, they said no. I called Uber, they said we don't have it yet. So what we did is we have a driving simulator at UMTRI, and we programmed this to simulate various levels of automation, and we're doing that pretty well. So it's got some pictures up here. That's our driving simulator. We have an integrated eye tracking system in the car, which is very nice. It gives us a very good, eyes are the window to the soul kind of a thing. A little bit more detail. It's a full cab. It's a Nissan Versa. It's a fixed base simulator, but it's pretty high fidelity. Nice field of view, virtual instrument cluster, and all of that. But for the purposes of this project, the more exciting part about it is that we have put in the programming necessary here to simulate various levels of automation. So right now, really, you can go and put in level 2, level 3, level 4, and it does it pretty well. So you hop in the car, you push a button, and it drives itself. Actually gets pretty boring after a while because you're not driving. But it does that. So it's a neat capability for us to have, and more importantly, it's the only way for us to actually test human behavior in these systems without going out on the road. So it's safe, it's economical, it's possible. And so what do we do with the simulator? It's a really good tool for us. And for the purposes of this study, we are simulating level 3 automation. So we've got longitudinal control in the sense the car stays on the road and maintains a certain speed according to the speed limit. We've got lateral control, so it stays on the lane, and that's really the two things that you need. You need the car to maintain speed and stay on the lane. Then there's navigation and all of that, of course, but we are, that's not the focus of the study. We just want level 3. We also decided, for various reasons, to have a 5-second takeover time for the subject. So technically, this would be level 2.8, not level 3. But that's the levels were proposed by NHTSA just as a way to give us some language to discuss this. So the fact that I can say level 2.8 and the fact that you can understand what I'm talking about is exactly what NHTSA's intent was, I think. So it's working well that way. We presented our participants with various driving scenarios that were both in automated and manual modes. So for example, the subject jumps in the car, starts driving a little bit, pushes a button, and the car says automated mode engaged, and then the car starts driving itself. And then we introduced various scenarios where the car would then give control back to the driver, basically just saying, handing back control, and it would light up and the seat would buzz. And we'd have the driver take control back. And we wanted to make sure that we had real reasons to give back control. So lane markings were missing, for example, or there was an emergency vehicle off to the side. And the intent of that, of course, was so that we present these events to the driver, and we want to measure and record everything that the driver does objectively in terms of their eye movements, their behaviors, their speed, and so on, as well as looking at more subjective measures. So what do? We recruit people. We had 3 age groups that we were interested in, and we recruited a total of, in fact, I think we're done this week. We recruited 72 people from 3 age groups. One is the 16 to 19-year-old trouble group. There are no 16 to 19-year-olds, so I can say that. Then we have a 25 to 45-year-old, I guess our comparison group really, and then we have 65 to 75-year-olds. We collected 3 sources of data. One was objective driving data from the simulator. So we had everything about speed, braking, lane position, and all of that, including timestamps about what you do when you put your hands on the road, on the wheel, and also we have eye tracking measures, as in where you're looking at. We are looking at inside the car. We are looking at in the environment, and that's important for us for analyses. We also recorded the task load, the workload on the driver using the NASA TLX, and then following the drive, we put together, or rather. Lisa and Lindsay put together a very nice structured interview to explore the perceptions of the drivers related to the drive. And this is the exciting part. And I'm not so qualified to talk about this. I'd be more qualified to talk about the objective measures. But the objective measures are fine. We're learning more about how drivers react, what they do, what the reaction time is like, what kind of takeover time we need, and all of that. But the structured interviews really drills down deep into drivers' perceptions. And that is really interesting. Now, like I said, I don't have the complete results over here yet. We're still completing data collection as we speak, but I've got a little bit of the results that we can talk about. The structured interview was conducted by the team following the drive, and it was really so that we could explore all the perceptions of the drivers related to the drive. And so there's a list here. We're talking about expectations. We're talking about how comfortable they were switching between modes, what are the challenges that they experienced during these transition periods, how ready they were to take control, what the perceptions again were about overall handling during the transfer of control itself. Trust is a very important question. It's a research question that's a whole different domain altogether right now. A lot of people working alone, solely looking at trust in automation, and we had some questions regarding that. Of course, then we had questions about, acceptance of the technology, what concerns people had about it, and then, whether people would be interested in actually getting it. There was also a self-administered questionnaire people answered regarding just demographics, plus also whether they were using certain technologies in the cars. That was important to us to kind of know, thanks, to know what their level of comfort and familiarity were with advanced vehicle technologies. So progress. Yeah, I put a little smiley face over there and they give 2 question marks. That's kind of, this is, yeah, well, I think we might have run the last subject last night. I'm not sure, but 72 subjects. It's been quite a challenge, but we have a great team, and it's been really good. We did have sim sickness. Somebody talked about sim sickness yesterday. We had, I think, a little bit more sim sickness than we projected here. Number one, because many of our participants were in the older age group, and number two, because they're being driven, they're not engaged in the driving as such, and it's like reading in a car when you're a passenger. Some people who are prone to sim sickness, or rather car sickness, would perhaps be more prone to sim sickness if that's indeed the case. We haven't studied this well. Again, we want to kind of look at some of this data, but sim sickness in automated vehicles and car sickness in self-driving cars actually is getting to be quite the topic of conversation. We had almost a half-half split for males and females. A lot of people with college degrees. Of course, we're recruiting from Ann Arbor, so these are some of the characteristics. And I'll try to go through this quickly. I am almost out of time, but here is a sample drive. And let's see, how can I make this play? Nope. Did that work? Okay, I'm going to pause this right here. So this is a sample drive. It's a video of a drive. This is not what the subject sees, but the top 3 screens is kind of what the subject sees. And these are views of the participant, and we have a view of the instrument cluster here. So I'll just set this up. The participant is being driven right now by the automation, and then she gets a tone that says, please take control, or please be ready to take control. She takes control. There's a crash off to the side, and then she chooses to give back control to the car. And that's another interesting thing for us is we want to know when they want to do that. You'll notice the steering wheel is moving on its own, and oh, we don't have audio. So we don't have audio, but what just happened was the car says handing back control. You'll notice that the instrument, the dashboard went black from green, and that's when the lady put her hands on the wheel. So now she's driving on her own. There's the reason why the control was handed back. There's a crash or something. And then she drives for a bit on her own, and then she decides when she is comfortable with handing control back to the automation. And when she does, when she's comfortable, she will push a button, and the car will start driving on its own again. sorry about the lack of audio, but at about this point, it says in a robot voice, automated mode engaged. So that's a sample. It's the longest drive, and we had about 7 or 8 scenarios of this sort where we have data from takeover. Okay, I am at 1 minute. I'm going to rush through this quickly. Again, preliminary results, not really worth talking about too much because, of course, this is incomplete. But we have some results from the workload from the NASA TLX. Not going to dwell on this much. We did see there's a large use of technology amongst our participants, and I think that's sort of to be expected because some of these, like email, of course, everybody uses email. Then other technologies also, there was a higher use than we thought about in terms of some of these, live streaming, TV, internet, movies and all, but we also had more of a younger population again, so that's probably driving that. Okay, I'm going to skip this. Right, so just this one I want to talk about a little bit. I'll concentrate 30 seconds on this slide. One of the main themes, again, and I can't do justice to this, but one of the main themes to emerge really was how the technology use and comfort was influencing trust and automation. So, the trust, the control, it's like how much does the driver want to let go of control so that the car can drive itself? How comfortable are they with that? That was a big factor. We're looking into that. For example, just anecdotally, we had drivers who, once they engaged automation, were absolutely happy for the car to drive itself, and they pretty much had very good trust and were not nervous about it at all. Whereas there was another group of drivers, and I'm pretty sure you can guess what age group, that were not comfortable with it. So they were either hovering or their hands, they were white-knuckled and looking at how a turn was being taken by the car and so on. So these are some of the constructs that I think we can explore about drivers' trust, acceptance, locus of control, and so on. In summary, and I'm out of time, we had some sim sickness, unfortunately, but we're going to look into why. But like I said, it was mainly because of older drivers. The approach, the method worked for us, and I think that's a big thing because this is more or less, it's a pilot study. We really wanted to see whether we could do this on a simulator, and it did look like participants were interested in this. They were able to describe their experiences well after having experienced, self-driving in a simulator. And, the various data collection that we did, objective data, the surveys, the survey instruments, that worked well in this context. So, sorry I had to rush to the last few slides, but again, we are almost done with data collection. We hope to have reports out soon, and any questions, I'm happy to answer.
What we're going to do, because of time, we're going to allow one question now. Then at the end of the session, if they have more time, we can ask more questions. Just one question.
Thank you.
So I enjoyed your presentation. Well, it seems like one of the main things you were investigating was the notion of the trust of the technology. And you also said that your participants had really good insight into their experience in your study. So did they have any comments about the nature of the simulation affecting their degree of trust of the technology versus what they may have experienced or felt in the real world?
Yes. Yes, and the structured interview, we were probing what people's reactions were, not only to the automation, but also how the simulation was, how the expectations were calibrated, and whether, the simulation was actually what they expected of automation. I don't personally have anecdotal data about what people's responses were. I don't know if Lindsay is here or if Lisa can speak to it.
But I think that's a good point that you're making. I think it's a good point that you raise, is that trust in this environment might have been influenced by the trust in the automated environment versus trust in automation in general. So we are exploring that, and that will be in the report. So.
Thank you. I'm sitting right here if there are questions otherwise.